Hello everyone, this is Jason Merkle with Horizon Hobby, and I'm joined here today by Mr. David Payne, product developer extraordinaire, and we're in a very, very special place today with a very special airplane.
Very special.
And we're going to take a few minutes to put it together because David assures me that it doesn't take many tools and it doesn't take much time to put together what is probably our most detailed, literally incredible E-flite bind and fly and plug and play aircraft that we've ever had. This, guys, for those that don't recognize it, I can't imagine nobody
at this point, right?
Doesn't recognize it. Yes, but this is the absolutely amazing Draco. So the E-flite DRACO 2.0m. So as you guys can see here, we've got the major pieces already out of the box. We did take the liberty of taking it out of the box to save us some time. But David, where are we today?
So if you haven't figured it out yet, we are actually in the hangar of where Draco was created. So very, very special place and a special opportunity for all of us to sit here and assemble this where the real one came from.
Yes, and a very quick special thank you to Mr. Mike Patey and his family for having us here, also for giving us the honor of creating a model of one of the most inspirational, amazing, full-scale aircraft that there's ever been, or really there's been in a long time. So
absolutely,
we're really excited about this. So you've been working on this thing for a number of years now.
We as a team have worked on this thing for probably close to 2 years. I think the story kind of goes when we saw it at Oshkosh the first year. I think it hit a lot of us, but it was like, we got to do this. And so I got lucky. I sent him a freaking Facebook message and said, hey, can we talk? I mean, that was how this started, to be honest. And yeah, we went back and forth, and this is where we ended up. I mean, after a lot of hard work from a lot of people, a really good team. But
yes.
It is probably the most accurate foam airplane there could be. We actually 3D scanned the real Draco and used that as our starting point to get to where we are now.
It's the most detailed, but really my favorite aspect and what we're going to cover today is that it's one of our most engineered or best engineered E-flite aircraft to date. The things that you guys had to do to make sure we had a clear cockpit, that we have all the scale details, all the functional features, and then on top of that, what I think you're really proud of is making it easy to put together.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, to me, it's to make the customer's life easier,
yes.
right? I mean, that's the important part. You don't want to have to go to the field and spend 30 minutes putting your airplane together.
Exactly. So we're going to cover the initial assembly, but we can also talk then about what makes it so easy to break down for transport and storage, because I really love that. You did that with no tools, a couple of thumb screws. It's absolutely fantastic. So guys, real quick, we don't have the instruction manual in front of us, so we're just going to cover this. It may not follow all the steps in the instruction manual the exact same way, but you know, there's different ways to skin a cat, different ways to build an airplane, but we've got the man himself here. He's going to give us some hints and tips along the way. He assures me of a couple of things. He said all we really need to assemble this airplane is an adjustable wrench or a socket set potentially, and essentially a regular medium Phillips screwdriver.
Number 2 Phillips screwdriver.
Number 2 Phillips screwdriver. We do also today, guys, have a hex driver with us. This is a 2.5 millimeter, I'm sorry, because we're going to cover a couple things that you don't necessarily have to do, but are a good idea to do. So where do we start?
Where do we start? You know, like Jason said, you can do this 100 different ways. I'm going to do this what I felt like is probably the simplest for us to do and kind of, makes it the easiest. So we're going to start with landing gear. This is how you get the landing gear out of the box. Literally, you guys will see a lot of videos when this announces, and a lot of people go through a lot of things on this airplane, but this is how you're going to get the landing gear. The landing gear, all of the shocks, you'll notice that the shocks are they're just like the real one. I mean, they literally are just like the real one. They're dual shocks, the whole thing articulates and functions just like the real one did. But yeah, this is how you get it. So all you have to do is put the wheels on it and then mount it to the airplane. So pretty simple as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's very nice. Oh, and real quick, while he's starting with the wheels there, I want to point out you do need a little bit of glue for the initial assembly, and it's very, very simple. You basically have to glue the leading edge slats onto the wings, and then we'll also talk about some of the extra scale bits like the antennas. And for that, we are probably going to recommend just typical medium CA. This is an EPO foam airplane, so you don't need foam safe CA. So again, medium CA would work well. Different kinds of Uhu pour here or other kinds of like foam tack glues, something along those lines would work well for those features as well. And it's not something to be scared of. If you haven't used a lot of glue to put airplanes together, it's only a couple of really quick spots. Very simple.
And like Jason's mentioning, especially the Uhu pour, to me, there's places on this airplane you don't want to mess up, right? You don't want that, excuse me, you don't want the accidental glue spill or glue drop, which sometimes we all know CA can do. So, that's why we have the Uhu pour out here. honestly, for my preference, while you can do it super fast with the CA glue and be done with it, the pour to me is probably the way to do this, because nothing on here is something that's complicated to glue together. You're mostly gluing together scale bits that are just, you know, they're just tack glued on anyway. So it's not really structural other than the slats, but pour will do the job or anything like that.
Yes, good tips, good tips. So real quick, he's just removing a lock nut that's on the axle.
It's a lock nut and it has 2 washers on it, a large one and a small one. And yeah, you slide the wheel on and then you put the large one on, which is basically a spacer.
Goes over the axle, I assume.
Over the axle, yeah. And then you put the smaller one on, which is
shim it up.
Shim it up, and then the lock nut, that's all it is.
And because it's a lock nut, you won't necessarily need to use Loctite. I know some guys are still adamant about using Loctite with the lock nut. You can, maybe some blue Loctite, that would be fine, but I don't think in this case you really would need to.
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to as far as that goes.
So David is using an adjustable wrench for this. You could use any number of wrenches to get this job done. I probably wouldn't recommend using needle nose pliers. I see guys do that kind of thing all the time, and you just don't get it quite as tight as you want, not to mention you booger up the
A nut driver is probably the simplest way to do it.
Exactly, exactly.
But I didn't bring one with me, so.
So that is pretty impressive. So
there's your landing gear. It's all
done.
said and done. You'll notice that the landing gear is actually a carbon fiber landing gear. We did a lot of stress testing, to be honest with you guys, a lot of stress testing. And you know, we just felt like that was the best way to go, to be truthful, for longevity and, you know, making a very strong, very durable product.
Yeah, it's almost a shame we have to cover it up with the
right. You can't see basically any of it, but it's under there.
You got carbon. In fact, there's a lot of carbon in this airplane, guys, all throughout the fuselage, obviously in the wing, in the stab. There's tons and tons of carbon fiber supports. So it's what we consider, you know, an EPO foam and composite blend.
There's actually quite a bit of carbon in here, and as you know, the originator of this really likes carbon. So felt it was good to have there, but yeah. So I highly suggest you put it on a piece of foam. I actually stole this out of the packing for the airplane itself, but I highly suggest you put it on a piece of foam. There's a lot of antennas and bits sticking off this airplane, and then just make sure you have the tail hanging off the table so you don't ding the tail as you do this. These fairings are basically there's a ledge in the fuselage that they basically just drop into, and it just kind of holds them in place. So as you do it, you just kind of sit them in there, and
wow, that fits really nice too.
That's really all there is to it. It has 4, you'll notice there's 4 larger Phillips head screws. That's the 4 for the landing gear. The screw selection for this airplane, what do we have here, Jason? There's 4, 6, so that's 10. I think there's 11 screws.
Not a lot of screws, yeah. There's some similar ones that are for the scale bits in particular. We'll talk about those here in a minute. Now, I assume these are probably going into blind nuts.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one place where you could use some blue Loctite if you wanted to, just to be safe. But that said, they've built a lot of these. They've flown a lot of these, and I think with the carbon gear, you can put a little tension over.
You can put a little tension on, yeah.
You don't necessarily need that Loctite, but again, it doesn't hurt to have blue Loctite anytime you've got a screw going into a nut. Never a bad thing.
So this is actually tying into the internal structure of this airplane. The airplane itself, it's a foam fuselage, but believe it or not, from the start here at the motor mount, there is a tubular carbon fiber structure that runs through the whole entire set of the fuselage. It runs up through the cabin side of things to really keep the cabin strong, because there's a lot of windows in the Draco. Like most of the fuselage is a window, so obviously it wouldn't be very strong without that.
Yes. Again, guys, a lot of extra engineering went into this model. You know, we, over the years, have learned things along the way, sometimes the hard way, and all of that culmination of all the things that we've learned on how to engineer a model to be not only relatively lightweight, that's important, but also to be durable, and then more importantly, to be easy to assemble. I think all of that kind of culminates into this model. So
while we're here right quick, there's a little piece of red foam. It is another just nice little scale bit that basically covers up your landing gear, the rest of the carbon fiber, unfortunately, but kind of, you know, finishes off the bottom of the fuselage. It's just got some double stick tape on the back of it. So you get out your handy pocket knife, because my fingernails aren't working.
You either gotta have long fingernails or a pocket knife or an X-Acto knife, and you gotta use care. So you gotta get the backing off of there. And then basically that's just decorative.
It's just decorative. It's not structural at all. It's not doing anything other than making it look better. So yeah, nothing to it as far as that goes. But just peel that backing off, and actually that little U-notch goes to the front.
To the front, okay.
And it just goes in the center there. It lines up with the rest of the corrugated structure there on the fuselage. That's it.
Nice.
Just more to kind of finish off the bottom of the airplane.
So this opening that's here is probably for airflow?
Yes, yes, your ESC is sitting right here, and you're feeding air in through here, obviously, and yeah, it's coming through there and coming out there.
Got it.
This is our Smart Spectrum Smart Avian 100 amp ESC, actually.
100 amp, yeah.
So now, the next thing I like to do is move to the tail. Now that it's on its gear, it'll sit very easy for you. I'm actually going to put the tail wheel on first before we put the tail, or the horizontal tail on.
Yes.
The tail wheel comes assembled. Again, most of the unit is already assembled. Again, one of my favorite parts, but yeah, the tail wheel works too. It's shock absorbing just like the rest of it.
It's pretty awesome.
You know, it matches dang near exactly to the real one. But there's 2 screws and 2 nuts with it, 2 lock nuts and 2 screws, Phillips screws. One is longer than the other, and obviously the bottom, you know, the bottom of the spring is the wider one, so the longer screw. But there's really not much to those. They just slide right in. You want them tight, but not too tight to bind.
I was just going to ask that.
They articulate, so you don't want to bind them, but you want to get them pretty snug.
And it is a lock nut, so again, you don't necessarily need to use Loctite, and you also don't have to cinch it down all the way tight. It's pretty important to make sure that you still have free movement after you tighten it.
Yeah, you'll want to move it around and just make sure.
And with a lock nut, I think it's important people understand you got to have a little bit of thread going past that lock.
Correct.
For it to be
you want the
functional.
You want the threads to be sticking past the.
Yeah. And when I say lock, it's basically
so
that nylon insert that's
kind of floating around.
Yeah.
Now, there's 2 ways to do this, but one of the simpler ways to do this is before you put this this top mount on, is to go ahead and put your steering springs in. That kind of makes your life a little easier as far as that goes. They are just Z-bends, so nothing super complex, but that way you can kind of hold it in place while you're doing it. There's a steering arm in the fuselage, and there's a tiller arm, obviously, on the tail wheel itself.
So that arm that's attaching to the springs here is more or less connected to the rudder. So it has a steering tail.
So there's an internal linkage that is actually connecting this rod to an arm. That arm is then going to a bell crank assembly that's tying it all into the rudder itself.
Yes, so you do have a steerable tail wheel, and it's got the springs in there.
It's a steerable and shock absorbing tail wheel.
That's pretty awesome.
Let's see.
So cool, little king shock back there, just like the full scale has. And then this also is a lock nut.
Yep.
And once you have this on there as well, it might be a little bit harder to check to make sure that it's free. But again, there's no reason to tighten it down all the way. And you also want to make sure that the threads extend past the lock on the nut.
I usually just back it off a little after I feel a little tension, and that's pretty good. So now at this point, you can put your horizontal tail in. But you can see there, there you go.
Love that.
Before we cover it all up, it'd be a good place to see how
Such
that articulates and works, right? Everybody seems to enjoy it when they play with it, though. Yeah. Again, so here's our horizontal tail. The horizontal tail is actually a snap-in lock system. So again, we were trying our best to make it a little simpler to do. So there's a snap tab log on the back of this that you'll see. And really you don't have to do anything except align it and snap it in, and it just pops in. Once it's popped in, you'll just want to pop your struts onto the ball links on each side, which are pre-installed. So really nothing more than just snapping them onto the balls themselves. And then the only thing left to do is the elevator ball link. You want to do it. Same thing though, just snap it in place.
Now this is a place where some guys like to have their radio turned on before they connect that the first time.
It'd be a good place
sure
to
that
center everything.
Yeah,
make
everything
sure
is centered mechanically before you snap that ball on. Because popping that ball on and off is not easy. There are ball link pliers out there. Primarily helicopter guys will have those in their flight box. But if you use a needle nose pliers, you can kind of pry on it a little bit and not damage it, but a lot of guys do tend to break those, taking them on and off a lot.
The elevator servo itself is actually quite simple to adjust. It's actually, there's a little magnetic hatch and it's right here in the bottom, but you know, you'll want to do it at the ball link for the threaded rods anyway. So, and then there's 2 little covers that are side covers. It basically finishes off the back side of the fuselage. There is a left and right to those, and basically the notch, I guess you would say, goes to the bottom. And then there's a ledge in the top of it, and it just slides in, you know, kind of into that same fit.
Interlocks a bit.
Now, one of the things Jason was mentioning is you'll see 6 of these basically, I guess you would say, wood screws or self-tapping screws. And so there's 4 short ones and 2 long ones. You'll want 2 of the short ones for this job. They're in just a recessed hole, so it's no big deal. 1 on each side, 1 screw for each one. starting to look like an airplane already.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how quick it goes. I think it might take longer to take it out of the box.
It probably does. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So real quick, guys, the box is two-sided, so make sure that you open both sides. Not uncommon in a lot of our products today. We maximize the space used in the foam so we can minimize the amount of waste. And then more importantly, you got to make sure that you get all the bags out. Oh, real quick, this is a little tip I've learned along the way. When you're building an airplane, don't take it out of the box and throw the packaging away until the airplane is done. And you know you've gotten all of the hardware out of the box. I can't tell you how many times usually I just put it out to the curb and it hasn't gone yet, but I'm putting it together and I'm missing a bag of screws. And so I go out and there it is, sure enough, in the foam somewhere that I missed. And luckily I didn't throw it away, but I know guys that have thrown it away and then they're out of luck.
So I say let's finish the rest of the fuselage before we move on to the wings.
Yes.
Since it's such a simple task.
Yes.
So this is our back hatch, which is basically the back window. You'll notice it's magnetic. It's real simple to just snap on, but it also, you'll see the back hatch is actually another magnetic hatch that gets into your receiver. Your receiver and light controller are installed in the back of there. So
pretty cool. It's kind of tucked away inside, but you can access it easily without having to unscrew anything.
637 receiver, and it's where all the magic happens. So.
Yes, so the Eflite basic version does come with that 637 TA receiver, which is full range telemetry. And then of course we have the Spectrum Avion Smart 100 amp ESC in there, and so we have full smart capability in the Eflite basic version. The plug and play version does also include that 637, or sorry, the Smart 100 amp ESC, but you would then have to have a smart compatible receiver to take advantage of the full smart telemetry. So I say get the Eflite. If you've got a Spectrum transmitter,
really
there's no reason not
and there's
to
a lot going on in the 637 for you for this airplane.
Yeah, and we might cover some of that in some other videos, guys. There's some additional things beyond just standard AS3X and Safe Select, which most of our models have these days, that we did to help make the airplane more enjoyable to fly overall.
So I'm going to go ahead and glue the back antennas on. But one thing to mention to this is you know, the antennas themselves, they're not going to go anywhere, right? They just slide in. So you don't need to like put massive amounts of glue. Just a little drop of ooh in here and it's never going to go anywhere. And that way, if you ever did bend the antenna, break the antenna, whatever, you can probably slide it out without damaging your airplane, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take anything at all. One note, you'll have 3 antennas. The bent one is the one for the bottom. You don't want to
and I remember asking you, were the antennas supposed to be white? And that was actually something I heard Mike say earlier. He's like, oh, they even have the antennas in the right place. They look right, the right shape, the right color. Pretty cool.
So there's a slot on the bottom of the fuselage. You'll see, real simple. That's the only place the antenna goes. And there's one on the top. And then the other one actually will finish off. It goes on the wing. So that kind of basically finishes off the backside. There's one more thing we'll do before we put the prop on it, because this way it'll stand on its nose and make life a little easier. Is you got your steps.
Oh, yes.
You got to have all your steps, right?
Yeah.
Got to be able to get in there.
Got to be able to get in the airplane.
Again, they have they slide into the fuselage, and then there is a screw in there also. So it's very simple. There's a slot right at the back of the fairing, and you slide that in. There is a left and right to them. You want the notch in front of the tab, basically. It's kind of a doubler to hold the back side of the fairing in.
And I think out of those 6 self-tappers, this is where the 2 longer ones go?
Yes, this is the longer one. See if I can do this.
It adds so much just cool factor to it when you have the antennas on and the steps on. And then guys, I'm telling you, you won't see it in this video. Hopefully you can see it in some of the other videos. And if not, if you ever get a chance to see one of these in person, if you don't already own one, it really is incredible. There's rivet details, there's panel details, there's bumps and humps and all kinds of things that even Mike said. He's like, he couldn't believe that we put it into the model. And the reason we were able to do that is because we 3D scanned the full scale Draco to make sure every little curve and angle and bit was on this airplane it could be.
So right here, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about, you know, these are mass produced airplanes, right? So like Jason mentioned, there's a 2.5 millimeter wrench here. It's really good to go over your airplane every once in a while, not only when you first build it, but maintain your airplane. Go over it every 50 or so flights. Make sure all the nuts and bolts are still tight, everything's still, correct, right? The landing gear, there's a lot of moving parts. So every once in a while, go check the the nuts and the screws and make sure everything's tight. You can check the screws. You know, this airplane has a reversing feature. So there's a lot going on up here in the front of the motor. So you'll see how stout the front of the motor is. But, you know, make sure all the motor bolts and all that stuff looks good and everything seems tight and happy. It's just a good check.
Yeah, my rule of thumb, no matter whether it's a ready-to-fly airplane, a bind-and-fly airplane, plug-and-play airplane, an ARF airplane, any exposed screw head that I can see, even if it came from the factory, right? I check every single one on every single model before I go and fly. And I know some guys are going to say, well, it's a bind-and-fly, it's a ready-to-fly, I shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't necessarily have to, but again, it's mass-produced by people. You know, and there's always a little bit of variation here or there. You know, things expand and contract.
If anything, it's just giving you awareness to where all these are, so that you can maintain your airplane later on.
Yep. So I just check everything. It's good that you check those, and then that's it. You
so yeah, this is just another really cool feature, right? So the prop is painted red on the front, black on the back, just like the real one was. You know, it's just it's shaped just like the real one was. It is a 4-blade prop, just like the real one was. Everything about it is you know, we did everything we could. I mean. You know, I got to give Matt Andren props. He has busted his tail on this one. We've all spent a lot of long hours in this airplane trying to make sure it did justice to the real one.
Yes. So again, adjustable wrench here, probably a socket, deep socket would help if you have that as well. Don't try using needle nose pliers to put a prop on, especially a prop that you may be using that reverse feature for.
And I'm doing this right now, but honestly, normally what I would do is I would build the whole airplane before I put the prop on. So you can set everything up, you can check your centering, you can do all of that stuff without having a prop on your airplane, right? Because there's a lot of things going on. So you'll be able to check all your centering, make sure your surfaces work, everything functions properly. And then normally last would be to put the prop on. So there's one, what do you call it, brass looking Phillips head screw, which is for the spinner. The spinner just slides on to that front of the prop shaft there and kind of bottoms out.
Yeah.
And that's just one screw.
So very nice, no back plate.
No back plate.
Which doesn't need because you guys engineered that spinner so it wouldn't flex.
Keeps it a little bit more simple to install.
Yeah. Oh, it looks good. Definitely looks the part. And so this is all custom. The motor's custom, the prop is custom.
There's really, truthfully, I mean, you know, take away the servos and the receiver. Everything on this airplane is new.
Pretty impressive.
It's all new tooling, it's all new features, it's all been done intentionally for this airplane. You know, we didn't source shocks, we didn't source a prop, we didn't source anything, truthfully. It literally is intended for this airplane.
Pretty impressive. So I know Mike was really enamored by exhaust stacks and a number of things that
to me was the payoff.
Yes.
To watch them be that excited.
Be sure to watch those other videos. We'll link to them in the description of this video, but if you haven't already, watch those. There's gonna be a lot of great videos on this product. Yeah. Really excited. A lot of people excited about it.
That's it. I mean, that's your airplane, you know, and working ready to bounce around, I guess you would say.
And what's nice is this is the main section you'll transport.
Yep.
So it's easy to take the wings on and off. So for storage and transport, even though it's a 2-meter airplane, it's a big airplane, it's pretty manageable.
Yep. And this is the daily, you know, this is how it goes, right? I mean, this is what you would be traveling around with. And I'm gonna slide this over here next to a cowling that you might recognize.
Yeah.
Sorry, shameless plug there. And we'll move on to the wing. So
the hardest part.
One thing we have to cover this, and I'm sure all of us have done it at one time or another. These pieces of wood, they are only for packing. That's all they're doing is just packing. You don't need them. You can throw them away unless you plan to put it back in the box. But as we say that, I'm taking out the 1/4 turn fasteners that hold the wing on. So again, no tools, no screws needed. That is your wing bolt.
So cool. So a 1/4 turn is all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Impressive.
You kind of, once you get it slid in there, you'll kind of wiggle that back in. There's little ears, you know, on them, so it kind of aligns it where you need to go. And once you're back to flush in the wing, then you'll feel it lock. It's a 1/4 turn.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It's on the bottom, so you don't see it. Yep, you can. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's very positive snap.
So we'll move on to the wing here. On the bottom of the wing, so admittedly, you got to be a little careful with this airplane because there's a lot of things hanging off of this airplane. But I would say doing the bottom is probably the best place to do first. We do have, on the real Draco, the ailerons are counterbalanced. So we did that also, but to be honest, they're real counterbalanced. They, you know, it's weight. It's not
just a hollow piece of plastic.
It's not just a hollow piece of plastic. It's actual weight. So these slide on. These screw on. Yeah, they kind of cover over the back side of the middle hinge there, and the Phillips head screw again.
Which makes sense because there is some weight to them, so
Correct.
you got to attach them with a screw.
And if you ever knock them off, obviously, since they're screw-on, you can replace them.
Very nice.
So, and then also, since you're here, the stingers, which, you know, these, you know, simple as they can be, it actually seems to mean a lot to Mr. Mike Patey. So, and he'll tell you that story why, but it's pretty cool, actually.
And it saves the finish on your airplane.
So, but these are intended to save the finish on your nice new Draco model. So, and they do work. I have tested them many times, but they do work very well. So that kind of finishes off the bottom of your wing. The front of your wing is your leading edge slat. That does have to be glued on. The slats, they are, I guess you would call them left and right, truthfully, because we've already installed the sticker for you, and the sticker goes to the root side of the wing. So pretty simple there. They just slide into these tabs and just sit right in there. Again, you can do this with CA, or you can do it with Uhu. To me, I would do it with Uhu just because, again, it's less risk of, you know, fogging up your paint job or anything like that. It takes a little longer.
Yeah.
Won't dry anywhere near as fast.
It does give you a little more time to work to make sure that you're deep into the slots, you're set all the way down, that you've got it aligned properly. It's not warped or twisted. Anybody who's got a timber model has probably put slats on in a similar fashion.
And, you know, I keep saying Uhu, but we sell, I believe, something called foam to foam. And there's another one now, I think.
Foam tack is pretty popular.
There's a lot of different versions of this. It's you know, the good thing I like about this glue is it's very forgiving, but it's also, you can just stick it together, and like Jason said, you have tons of time to work with it, or you can stick it together and peel it back apart, which kind of puts glue on both surfaces, and then if you wait 5 to 10 minutes, when you stick it back down, it's not going to move.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I'm going to do here. I'm going to kind of...
I would liken it to contact cement, something similar to that. So it's not as common in wood ARFs in particular, but it works great on foam stuff.
Right. So now that I've kind of tacked both sides, we'll let that sit for a second. And this is where the magic happens. The video fast forwards. Right. While we're doing that, we'll go ahead and do the other wing. Same with this wing. This wing has a piece of wood in it also. Again, it's just for shipping. You don't need it. You can throw it away. And I didn't bring 2 pieces of foam. So
No,
you get to hold this one.
Oh, well.
See? I knew we had him
See,
there
I'm
for
here for
something. Something was good.
So one thing to point out about the wings is that everything is already...
No, there you go.
Whoop.
180, there you go.
Everything is already installed in the wing. So the servos, of course, all the wire harnesses, the lights are installed. You've got numerous lights in each wing panel. So you've got not only the wingtip navigation lights, strobe light, we've got the landing lights, we've got the down lights. There's a lot of lights in this wing.
There's a lot of lights in this airplane. That's one thing that is just, really to me, it's very cool, because that's, I think, one thing that probably is something that really stands out about the real Draco was just how many lights he had on that airplane. And, you know, when you saw it, whether it was daylight or evening time, you knew it was coming. You knew what that was. So,
yeah, his brother told us that story earlier,
right? Yeah.
Of him flying into Alaska. His brother landed first, and then he knew Mike was coming because you could not only hear the sound, Draco had a very unique sound because of the turboprop engine, but then also you could see the lights. And he said you just knew. That was his airplane. He made it safely, landed, and yeah, the rest is history.
All right, so by the time we tack this one up, you can flip that over. The other one will be ready. We'll put it on, and then we can show you how to put a wing on.
Also, something nice to point out is that this does have hands-free servo connections, and it's our version 2. And so we've learned some things over the years about different tolerances and whatnot. This stuff works great, guys. It is so easy because now you just slide the wing panel on. As long as you make sure you seat it properly. In fact, I think you have to seat it properly in order to get the thumb screws in. So as long as you've done that, you're going to have solid connections across the board. So all your servos connect, your light connectors connect, and you don't have to worry about fishing
Everything
wires,
is done
connecting
for you.
things. So nice. Now at the field, it takes 2 minutes to put it together instead of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Push that one in, kind of spread the glue around, and take it back out.
Pull it off. Basically, let the air more or less set it up a little bit.
For a second.
Then we'll move back.
I'm actually going to go ahead. The right wing takes the other antenna, so I'll go ahead and stick that in, just so it's done. There's 2 more features. Don't let me forget about these before we stop. Video. They're kind of cool.
Yes, the grab bars.
So, But now, yeah, if you've used the glue that we were using, it will become quite a bit more tacky.
Yeah, I can see you're having to press
push
on it
them
quite
in
a bit more now.
but now they're not going to move once I let go of them, right? And there's recesses in the foam that align this quite well. So once that's in, you don't have to worry about it. It's all good to go. So that wing is completed, right? Mm-hmm. Other than, okay, let's go ahead and do those. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and do those.
Yeah, they just slide in that hole in the root.
Correct. Again, this is one of those things where it takes absolutely nothing but, you know, scale details out the wazoo for this thing, right? But these are the little grab handles that you actually use. You know, that's something that they were talking about earlier to us is, you know, in the world of stole, right? There's all these cubs and they're basically all the same size. I love cubs, don't get me wrong, but they're all the same size, and that's one thing that always stood out with Draco was how massive it is. It's a huge airplane. I think Mike said something like 14 feet, right, is where the top of the wing is. So obviously you need some help to get to...
That's to help the guys get on top to fuel it, right?
Yes, correct.
Pretty cool. So they use the steps, then they use that handlebar
right?
to pull themselves up there.
So while that other wing's drying, let's go ahead and bolt this one on.
All right.
Carbon fiber wing tube.
Yes, very nice wing tube.
You're gonna other side.
Oh, other side. So there's different schools of thoughts on this. You know, some guys, they like to put the tube in the wing first. They like to put the tube in the fuselage first. You can do it any different way. I think in our wings we've got stops, right? So the tube would stop where it's supposed to in the wing.
And I mean, there's really nothing special. You can see all the connections are already done for you. They're done here. There's like multiple ways or multiple alignments, right? So the tabs are aligning the wing, and then these are also aligning.
Pings, yeah.
So you've got kind of redundancy
positive
in that. But yeah, you can hear the stop in there.
Yep.
But once the tabs are in, I usually get it kind of where I can get to the end of the wing and grab the wing tip there and just slide right on.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Be careful pushing on the wing, of course, because it is foam.
Yep.
You don't want to break it.
You got a decent amount right here.
Yeah, but up at their leading edge there, it's pretty solid.
Again, these are quarter turn, but they literally, you know, once they're back flush, you kind of wiggle them a little, and once they're back flush to the surface, that's all you need. And that's it, the wing's on.
Let's tilt that up so they can see that.
Actually, yeah, I can do that again.
But it is so simple, guys. That's what makes this airplane practical for a lot of people. It's a relatively large airplane, 2-meter wingspan. It's not small, but at the same time, it breaks down and it's very easy to carry in a car.
I can't get my fingers on it. Lay it back down for a second. Let me get it out and then I'll show you guys putting it in. There. All right, lay it back up.
All right.
So yeah, again, just pretty simple. It goes right in there. And once you've aligned it in both holes, you'll hear it snap in and quarter turn. It's locked.
That's it. Man, it's so easy to take the wings on and off this model. It's absolutely fantastic.
So now we'll finish our other slat right quick.
I bet there's guys watching the video that when they see that, that's when they decide to buy the airplane. Because a lot of people think about that these days. How about transport?
Well, it's a big airplane,
How
right?
about storage?
So,
exactly.
Yeah. Where you're going to keep it, where you're going to, you know, what kind of car you have to transport it, all of those things are very important.
Yeah, well, I think with the wings off, you could put this in the trunk of most sedans.
Should, yeah.
And one thing I will say too is the fit and finish on this model is fantastic. I know you guys worked really hard with the factory to make sure that not only it was engineered so it went together well, but things just fit really well. They look really, really nice together. A lot of really tight joints. You know, the edges are crisp. Oh, the surface detailing is fantastic. The corrugation on the surfaces, you know, the rivets.
Yeah, it was really, I don't know, to me personally, it was extremely exciting when we decided to 3D scan the real one, because I knew right then that we would have everything we needed to make sure that every surface was correct, right? It had the right shape, which this airplane is an extremely difficult airplane to get the right shapes on anyway, especially if you're just going to draw it from scratch. But to have that 3D scan, and then all we did was basically kind of, I mean, we did some changes to make it flyable as an RC model, but for the most part, you know, the rivet lines and where things are placed is exactly where they should be. And
that's it.
Ready to fly.
It's done. We honestly probably took more time making this video than what most people would take to assemble it. I wanted to give you guys some hints and tips along the way. It might be your first time putting together a model this large. You might be intimidated, but it's so simple to put together, so simple to fly. Not necessarily a trainer per se. We'll have some other videos that will talk more about the details of the airplane, the features of the airplane. We'll have some flight talk videos where we talk about flying the airplane in different circumstances. Hopefully we have a video out there with Mike flying it.
Yes, I'm
sure we will.
I hope tomorrow we get to fly with Mike and Dex.
It's gonna be awesome. So there you guys have it, real quick. Not unboxing, but an assembly video outside of the box.
Yes.
And I think it covered pretty much everything you guys need to know. But be sure to check out the manual. Follow that anytime you're in doubt.